This is Roman Davis with Cascade Media. Today I have with me Chief Forte, or I should say Sheriff Forte with Jackson County. Um, Sheriff Forte, could you go ahead and just provide a little bit of your background, who you are, where you come from? I know that you're a Kansas City native, but this is actually my first time meeting you face to face. So what would you like people to know if this is their first time being introduced to you?
I was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri, single parent. I have four of the siblings, three older brothers and a younger sister. We're all within my sister and I 18 months apart, but everybody else is about a year apart. So I got three older brothers. Um, I love Kansas City. I wanted to be a police officer since the time I was in the sixth grade. I was hired by Kansas City in 1985. I progressed through the ranks, sergeant, captain, major, deputy chief, and then I was appointed chief in 2011. And I served 5.5 years. After I retired from there, within 10 days of me being retired for a year, I was sworn in as appointed sheriff. And then 2 years later, I ran for sheriff. And then 4 years later, or 2 years more after that, because I finished the last guy's term. So I've been here 4 years now, and I enjoy doing what I do every day. I've been blessed, and I just thank God for this opportunity to continue in law enforcement.
And that is an incredible story. So you say you started out as 12, wanting to be a police officer. Then you came to KCPD in 1985. So could you tell me a little bit about that experience, especially rising to the ranks of actually being a chief of police? How is that? What is that like being a Black man? And I know I had a discussion yesterday with an elder in regards to the history of the police department, how it started out as to capture slaves, and then as it evolved over the years and being used in certain capacities to promote systematic racism. So please, if you can, share some insight about how that was for you, being a Black man navigating through KCPD and rising through the ranks.
It opened my eyes when I first joined the police department in the academy, the way that minorities and women were treated. I heard the stories coming up. My mom told me dad turned 16 and had a car. She didn't want more than one person riding in the car. All these things came together when I became a police officer. I had a sergeant tell me once that four people, he didn't say Black people, but he said four people riding in the car together at 2 o'clock in the morning is a good car check. So some of those things started coming to mind and reflect back on it. When I came in 85, some of those people, law enforcement officials, the police officers, had came on in the 60s, 50s, and 60s. So some still had that mentality, when they had the water hoses turned on people and the dogs. I heard one say that when he was at the riots, he had a good time. He said it in front of me. Some weren't shy at all. So it opened my eyes to a lot of things. I wasn't shocked. I've been stopped by the police before. Of course, I was respectful because I wanted to join. Matter of fact, when I was in the process, I got stopped at 43rd and Prospect by a police officer, two of them. They emptied the trunk of the car. I was a Federal Reserve Bank processing clerk, and I got off early in the morning. I lived south, but I came to the city because I didn't want to go sleep on the highway. And so I got some of those experiences, and then I got to see some firsthand. And I just want everybody to know I intervened anytime I saw somebody doing something wrong. And sometimes that you're not popular when you do that. I was told I need to, just stay in my lane and those kind of things. But I never witnessed anybody physically abuse anybody, but I've heard people say some things and those sorts of things. So that early on, it made me want to get promoted because I was thinking I need to get in a position where I can do something, and you can't really do a whole lot on the bottom. They don't really pay attention to you. So and that inspired me to get promoted each time. And I had some great people around me, like the first sergeant that actually came to me, Julia Cook at the time. She took under her wings and told me when to shut up and not say things that, being a young Black male, I had a chip on my shoulder sometimes, and I wanted to change the world and make an impact. But, people like that, Julia Cook, the first sergeant that I worked for that actually took an interest in me when I was an undercover detective in Vice. So she guided me along my career before she retired, and just having somebody like that to tell you the truth, not trying to make you feel good or telling you what to hear. And that helped me make it. That helped me get through the process. And then over the years, I had other people, not just people of color. I had other people kind of take me under the wings, and I always have given more than what they paid me for. I was never one of those people to say, this is what they pay me, so this is what they're gonna get. I worked like that. They were paying me $1 million every day. I did more than what was required, and that's what I encourage people to do. Some of the young people out there, you're gonna run into some obstacles. You're gonna want to do some things and say some things. Just wait till you get in a position where you can have a significant impact. And it just took me a long time to mature and figure that out, with the help of so many people. And then thank God for putting them in my life.
And that you telling your story, and I appreciate that, but you telling that story of how you had to persevere, giving 100%, treating it as if you were getting paid $1 million. That shows that effort was not wasted to allow you, those efforts to allow you to get to the position to where you are at. But also, the people that helped you along the way. And I know that police officers sometimes get a bad rap. And sometimes from the outside looking in, it's hard to understand that throughout the process, there are allies within there that want us to succeed, that want to change the system. But, it is a long process that takes determination, that takes perseverance, and it takes a community of people willing to make those changes. And, you have risen through the ranks. And I'm sure that as you have demonstrated and been a good beacon to follow, that has encouraged other officers, other Black officers, to come on to force. So could you please provide some of your perspective of how important it is to have officers of color, whether it's on a sheriff level, county level, to the local municipalities, and also policing in a community in which a person is from?
I think that's part of the trust building process. Yeah, it's uncomfortable for some people to talk about it and really visualize it. But sometimes Black people want to talk to Black people. Black people want to be represented in law enforcement. And I'll give you a quick example. I've been to probably 9 or 10 homicides in the last 3 weeks. Homicide scenes, most of them in Kansas City. The double homicide just last weekend, I guess it was Sunday, the double homicide in Raytown. I responded to that. But I was at a homicide scene that I won't go into a lot of detail. And it was a guy that pulled up, and he was irate because he knew the deceased victim, and they weren't going to let him see the victim. The victim was down the street in view, not physically in view, but you could see the scene down the street. And he looked over and saw me after he was saying some things to one of the people investigating, and said, "Hey, Chief Forte." And he walked over and gave me a hug. I'd never met this guy before. And then I explained the same thing that the sergeant was explaining to him. And he calmed down. He said, "Man, I'm glad you're here." But just seeing that trust level, we know, there's race. And we don't admit it in law enforcement. You very rarely hear us talk about it. But racism's in law enforcement. It's in housing, banking, sports, education, everything else. But we don't talk about it as the leaders in law enforcement. We'll say, well, we don't see it. And if we see it, we'd address it. Those kind of things, just those generic terms. But it's real in law enforcement. And my problem in law enforcement, we have the power to stop you and come up with a reason if we don't have a reason. So we can detain you, your liberty, and we can take a life. So that's why I have a problem with it. We have to admit that we have biases. We have to admit that some people show those biases to other races and genders. So I think it's imperative that we set the example. I don't go out and recruit. I know this sounds bad. I don't go out and recruit. I want people that want to come in law enforcement, that want to be there, not somebody looking for a job and just stumble into it. I want somebody that have that servant-minded mentality. And I don't talk about this often either. From day one, I believed in faith-based policing. They come up with all kind of problem-oriented, community policing. But my philosophy is faith-based policing, and you can't go wrong, and that doesn't change. And again, I don't share that with a lot of people, but I think that's important. And at the sheriff's office, when I arrived in 2018, May of 2018, there had been one Black male hired in the last 6 years. And I've hired probably over a dozen Black since I've been here, and I didn't go seek anybody out. They seeked us out. They decided they wanted to come here for different reasons. And I've hired a lot more white deputies than Black. So I don't want anybody saying, "Well, he just hiring Black," because I get that. I'm being sued. I got probably half dozen or so lawsuits right now about different things, but that's okay. It comes with the job, and that's why some of the young people out there, be careful what you sign up for and be ready for it. And I thank God. I don't want to forget. In addition to thanking God for the opportunity twice to lead an organization, But I thank God for the people out there to support me in the community. I couldn't do this without support of the community, including my family, my immediate family, distant
Yeah.
family. I could not do this at this level without having support out there in the community. And they voted for me and put me in office as sheriff 2 years ago. So I just want to make that clear too. I don't take it lightly. I don't take it lightly to be able to serve like this in our community. And we're doing some things differently at the sheriff's office. Uh, Everybody, not excited about what we're doing, but we're going to be fair, and we're going to, we're going to do what we need to do to serve our entire community.
Right. And you bring up a very specific point in hiring more officers and officers that are following your lead, and that you've been able to bring on. But what that does, in my opinion, it creates a more diverse police force, where you bring in different perspectives, different cultures, different ideologies. And to me, that actually strengthens the police force and also strengthens the community, when changes are being implemented. And so, from that perspective, you mentioned that you have incredible support from the community. What are some things that the community could do, in regards to assisting police to help keep the community safe, but also to be more sustainable and understanding that police officers have families, whether they're black, white, or whatever? They have families, they have the same needs as us, and they, at the end of the day, want to go home as well. So, what is some advice that you have for the community in regards to some of the things they can do, to help improve communication in between law enforcement and also the community?
I say partner with us. That's a huge piece, and I'll share this. That I think some of the homicides uh, would be prevented if some of these people out there that are angry and have poor conflict resolution skills, if they had a contact in law enforcement, they could call and say, "Hey, this person did this to me. I'm angry. I'm thinking about doing this," and have somebody to talk them through it. I think that's been a problem my entire career. We don't go out there and build relationships unless we need something. I say some of us, and I say us, and I include me in that piece because I don't want to point fingers at anybody. We don't point, we don't build relationships until after the crisis. Oftentimes we want to, have the barbecue in the park and do those kind of things. We need to start building relationships before there's a crisis, kind of like the cameras that we just activated and
Yeah.
implemented a few days ago. Cameras don't mean a whole lot if you don't trust me, because you don't think I doctored the cameras up, or we edited this or that, whatever. You have to have that trust beforehand. And even officer involved shootings, you have to have that trust pre-incident. You can't go out there and decide you're going to have a bunch of town hall
Yeah.
meetings after the fact. And that's what we've done, because we're not profit driven. And it's been okay to do that. It's been
Mhm.
okay to do that because our check's going to be the same. And that's why I don't actively recruit people. I want people here for the right reason, not for a paycheck. Not that you make a lot of money in law enforcement, but I want them here because they want to serve, and they truly want to serve, and not just trying to get a badge or have some kind of a desire to have power. So those
Right.
kind of things. But I think just building those partnerships, and it's up to us in law enforcement to reach out to people and give number. And I'll do this today. I give my number out every opportunity I can get. This is my personal cell phone, 816-492-1076. 816-492-1076. Don't call me if you're getting stopped and you want to tell somebody Chief Forte or Sheriff Forte. Call me if you have a problem. If you want me to help resolve it, or text me if I don't call you right back. And I'll call you. I'll call everybody back or text everybody back, but as soon as I get the time. But I think just building those relationships over time, and that's what helped me. I think that's what helped the community at the chief selection process. They stepped up and said, we want Daryl Forte. The votes for the sheriff's office, they were saying they wanted me because I built relationships. I've done some things wrong too, but I've tried to build relationships and just be available to the community, so I can be a voice for some of the people that might not know anybody in law enforcement.
And that makes sense. And building those relationships is key. And also that's a big part of Black culture, is that we thrive on relationship first, and that makes a big difference. And so the efforts that you've been taking, to be a demonstrator of that, we see the fruit of those results. And so when you are looking at other officers, what are some of the characteristics that you uh, want officers to demonstrate? What type of aptitude does it take to really be an effective officer on any level?
I think to realize that we're here to serve is not about us, and that's some quick indicators about that. When somebody's saying they only want to work a certain shift, they're not thinking about the customers that we serve, things like that. So I want someone with the servant minded attitude. It's not about me. I'm here to make sure that my customers are okay, my internal and external customers. I want them to think like that. I want someone that's dedicated. They're willing to give their all when they're at work, not having to be forced to do some things. I want someone that's fair. We don't put that out there on the job qualifications that we want fairness and all that kind of stuff. We talk about your education and all this kind of stuff. But I'm looking for somebody that's fair. I don't care if you've had 5 jobs in the last 10 years. If you're improving each time, I care about what you did at that job. If you gave a 2 week notice or you're out of respect, those kind of things. That's what I look at when I hire people, not just about how long they've been somewhere or how many times they've been somewhere. Because oftentimes, and I did the same thing when I was young. I bounced around, but each time I did something I thought was better, I could get something out of it in growth. So those kind of things.
And that speaks leaps and bounds, because those characteristics, and how you kind of mentioned faith-based policing, those are things and principles that are grounded within you. And so having those principles and standing on those, I could see how that could serve to benefit you in your efforts and everything that you do, because like you say, you're dealing with the people of the community, which are also your customers, and the aim is to provide that service. And so speaking of providing service, we're going to look at the extension where you mentioned the body cameras. Could you explain how that particular process works, and how officers, just give us a little bit more insight upon that, because I know that's a recent development.
Okay, officers are required, our patrol deputies, and whether they are on duty in a patrol area or they're working off duty, secondary employment, they're required to have their body worn cameras on and activate during certain situations. Like if they perceive there's going to be a use of force, if there's an investigation going on. But let me make this clear too, because people might not understand this later. When there's an incident, we may not always share that footage. And there's a number of reasons. We're not trying to hide anything, but sometimes it can impact an investigation. And that's what I've been sharing the last few days. It's not automatic that we're going to show that footage. You could have someone that witnessed an incident with the deputy, and we have several witnesses that are reluctant to come forward, and they see the video and they listen to the reaction of the video, and they decide they don't want to come forward. Our attorneys might say, well, this person didn't come forward till they saw the video, and that's where they got the information from. Just so many different things, and I can't go into every scenario because it'll be used against me in court. Like I said, I'm being sued now, and they go back and look at these interviews and my tweets and other things that I put out publicly. So I got to be careful on that, but we'll be transparent when I can. I know that sounds shallow, but we can't put everything out every single time. I'm hoping the majority of the time we could share right away, but there will be some occasions where I can't share the video. And I just want to make that clear. I want to make that clear. I don't want people to think when something happens within an hour or so, they'll see the video, because there's some other things that go with it. And I'll say this too. All investigations are not transparent. Law enforcement is not always transparent. There's sometimes reasons why we can't share some things, and I think transparency is good. And sometimes I think not being transparent is good, because we don't want to do anything that jeopardizes, say, a homicide investigation by, you have 50 people come down and say, show me. And then you have a family saying, you jeopardized my case by doing this because these people, we didn't want you to do it. So we listen to families, we listen to our legal advisors and a whole bunch of other people before we do it. We just don't listen to the people with the mic in front of the news media.
And that makes sense, especially when you explain that some things can be shown, some things can't be transparent, and really that comes down to the policies and procedures. And so, how important is it for the community to understand the law, to understand their rights, and to understand police procedures and policies when dealing with law enforcement?
I think it's imperative for us as law enforcement leaders and others to share this before there's a crisis, like we just talked about. Don't wait till something happens and say, I can't show you. I've been sharing the last few days. I'll be transparent as much as possible, but I will not do anything to jeopardize the case because, again, we have family members out there and victims. Everything's not a homicide, but we want to make sure that everyone's okay, emotionally, and that we have a solid case when it's presented to the prosecutor's office, and not just based on, some of the comments out there from some of the public. And I understand the frustration of the public, and we created that. And I just want to make that clear. Law enforcement has created the position that we're in by doing what we've done over the years. And then we've had some high profile cases in the last, 5-7 years or so, where now we're saying, hey, we have to change. We shouldn't have been to a point where we have to change. We should have been wanting to change and finding opportunities to change before now. So the things happen for a reason. Some law enforcement agencies are capitalizing on it and moving forward and getting better. And some are just digging their heels in because, again, we're not profit driven. And coming up, I've heard people say there's nothing they can do to me. As long as I come to work, you can be borderline rude and still be okay in some cases because you're saying I'm trying to take over the situation. I had to scream, I had to do this or whatever. And what I found in law enforcement, it's hard to prove racial profiling. It's very difficult, but you can prove unfair treatment. That's easy to prove. And I'll give you an example. And I respect the people that I work with here, but the majority of the sheriff's deputies, they took a vote with the Sheriff's Deputy Association. They voted for the other candidate twice. They supported the other candidate twice, endorsed the other candidate twice. So, and the last guy, and he's not a bad guy. He made some bad, some bad decisions. Not a bad guy. I still think he's an okay guy. But when he left the office under scandalous conditions, they supported him to come back. They had things in the newspaper about me and supporting him. It was unanimous that they said the press release. So that's kind of what I'm fighting, even as the leader. So I want to tell some people out there, be careful what you wish for. I love being here and I'm glad I'm here. But just because you go to the top don't mean you're respected and you're going to get things your way all the time and the support you need. But again, when it's faith-based policing, that's minor issues compared to what I based on what I know I need to be here for. Those are minor issues when you don't get support from people. Now people are saying they support me and all that kind of stuff, but they don't really have any choice. Kind of like a criminal out there saying, okay, I'm gonna follow. You don't really have a choice unless you want to, if you want to do the opposite, there's consequences. So I respect the people here. I understand the people that say they're on board now. The same ones that hated me and came out against me are the same people that are out there policing our community. So I know what I'm dealing with. And like I said, I'm always going to be fair. I don't hold grudges against anybody, but I just share this with our community so they know what we're dealing with too. And that's not just in some law enforcement agencies. Well, I said it's in probably most law enforcement agencies when you have people that don't understand the culture that they police are the leaders that come in.
You said enough. Definitely said enough in regards to what it takes to be an officer. You updated us on, the body cams and gave explanation about the community, and the service component is very instrumental. And so I'm not going to take up much more of your time today. I will definitely reach out to you again for more interviews where I want to dive into more questions that the community has sent me. But I wanted to use today for us to build a rapport and just kind of get a feel for you and understanding of your demeanor. Many elders and people that I've spoken to, your name has been good in my book. So I appreciate your time. I just want to say thank you for your continued service and leadership. And until next time, together we are stronger, together we make change, and together we make things better. I want to thank you again, Sheriff Forte, for your time, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you.
The program is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association.